Writing for Children, YouTube class number 19. Today, because it's Thursday, which is kind of a Friday for us, because I'm give myself a break from the YouTube performances on Fridays, I thought I'd do a recap for the final project. Okay, so as you know, I don't think any of this will be new to you, but it may be good to have it all in one YouTube. Okay, so what's expected? It's due on May 22nd. Okay, you can have till 5 o'clock if you want. Okay, next. What you're going to give me is the one chapter of a YA novel. I'm looking for 800 to 1,000 words, okay? Not less than 800, and you can go over. So if you want to go to 1250, you can go as long as 1250, okay? Now, it can be any chapter of your YA novel. So you can choose, could be a middle chapter, beginning chapter. Sometimes that even switches around. I think I explained to you, sometimes I write a whole manuscript or part, whatever. My editor says, drop the first 4. I'm like, what? So I really should have started at 5. So maybe you want to start at chapter 5. Anyway, doesn't matter. Okay, so what you need to do is think of, I think the main thing is character, and you'll see in one of the bits of author's advice today, I thought it was really interesting, at least I read it today, the author that said, you know, it's character that determines the story, right? So have an interesting character and really get a feeling for your character. You don't have to do it in first person, but many authors do use first person in the YA business. So you might want to try an I person. Doesn't have to be you, could be you. Doesn't have to be during a pandemic, it could be during a pandemic, right? It should be a kid. Okay, unless it's an adult looking back at and then remembering being a kid, but I'd probably, to keep it safest, I'd keep it the voice of someone in the YA age group. So we're looking at like 15 to 17. 18's getting a bit old for the YA audience, but if you want, you can. But I wouldn't go older than 18 because then you're starting to get more into books that are more likely to be read by adults. There's even they're talking about a new category, which is like, what do they call it? I don't know what they call it, but it's basically older than young adult. I don't say that's really become like a big trend or anything. It just was a marketing term that I heard a few years ago. Okay, so interesting character. You can choose your verb tense, but be consistent, okay? My editor, Sarah Harvey's, often encouraged me to write in the present tense, but I know that there's some people that don't like it. They find it feels too forced. So if you want it to be someone looking back and make it in the past tense, it doesn't have to be looking back from a long time before, but it's up to you, okay? I kind of have a preference myself for present. I find it's very direct. Up to you. But be consistent. Next, you'll probably want to introduce another character, maybe more. As we talked about with the middle grade, don't introduce 12 kids, right, or 12 friends. It's too confusing. Remember the concept of using foils, so characters who are quite different. So you have, you know, someone who's outgoing with someone who's shy, someone who's a rebel, you know, a troublemaking teenager with, I don't know, the friend or the neighbor or the sibling who's not a troublemaker at all, who's very cautious, right? So that might be a helpful way to proceed. So remember that. Remember about using dialogue. Unless the whole thing takes place in your character's head, which is possible, okay, and that's fine. If you want it to be like an inner, you know, a monologue, that's okay too. But if you're going to introduce people and there's going to be like, you know, interaction, then make sure the dialogue is real. Make sure it's interesting. Leave out the boring parts. Hi, how you doing? We don't need that. You know, people, we say it to each other, but it's not that interesting. So leave that stuff out. Think about body language, right? Even if you have like an inner monologue, you could tell us what they could say what they're doing, right? And if there are 2 people, then make sure it's not just like quotations being exchanged, like situate it, right? Which reminds me to remind you to think about the setting, okay? So that's part of what you need to do too. Have an interesting setting and set up an interesting situation. So you can give the kid an interesting problem, for instance. Okay, the book that yesterday I had my my RadCan appearance, whatever you call a radio thing an appearance, and one of the books I talked about was Rap pour violoncelle seul, author's name Maryse Paget. And again, it was kind of like the situation is pretty dramatic as a situation, but it was a poor kid from a not a good family situation, never knew his own father. It happens to be a kid named Malik. So the father was Moroccan, and so he has an Arabic name. And the mother's like a mess. She has an alcohol problem. He's lived in 3 foster homes, and he gets caught stealing at the beginning of the book. And what does he steal? Subway gift cards. And he ends up, rather than when the police come, the manager of the store says, look, I hear this old age home's looking for volunteers. So instead of the police, making a big report, they settle it that he'll do volunteer work at this old age home, where he becomes really good friends with this guy named Marius. And Marius is an old guy who's difficult, and everybody, like all the other people at the old age home, run away when he appears. So that sets up an interesting situation. So think about that. Don't make it too easy. Remember what we like, trouble. So it's not going to be that you go to an old age home and you instantly click with the person that was very nice. I'm happy if that's your volunteer experience, but it sucks for a story. Okay? So to recap, interesting character, a teenager of the right age, 15 to 18, dialogue, unless it's all an inner monologue, good setting, conflict, real feeling. We've talked about this before. And actually, the last thing I want to say, it comes from my nonsense class, something that they're doing. So on the forum, we've been doing this weird thing, which is they're writing about puberty. It's actually gone super well, although one class was reluctant. Anyway, now they're all writing really remarkable things about puberty. And one student said yesterday, this is what the lesson really for today. She said at the end, when I reread what I just wrote, it makes me cringe. Okay, that's it. Write about stuff. Go be a little daring with your writing. Go places that are hard, right? Write about feelings that make you uncomfortable. That's the best writing in the world. If it's too easy, if it's just like, oh yeah, one's a rebel, one's a good kid, I could just write it like that. It's going to be hard work, because you really, and I'm not kidding about this, go inside, poke around a little bit. Right? Go into some emotions. You've all felt them. If you've been going through stuff during the pandemic, you know what I'm going to tell you? Use it, right? Use the trouble. Stir it up and let it out in a creative way. Okay, goodbye. I'll see you Monday. Take care. Work on your stories. Oh, and partner up with somebody. It's up to you who it's going to be. But I would say show your work to your editor, and I'll look at it. I'll explain next week how my new plan for what we'll do next with the forum. Okay? Thanks for everything. Thanks for working hard, and stay healthy, and thanks for looking after the old people, including me. Bye.